my freedom, the path to my freedom. Now let me be clear, my blindness is a bad thing. I'm not going to tell anybody that they need to be blind in order to learn the lessons that I've learned. If you can learn what I've learned and what I'm going to share with you without like having a significant disability, then I would much prefer you to have that. So that's how we know that that's a bad thing. So let's never confuse our treasure with our trash, ever. We can always get some good stuff from it, but let's make sure we keep the bad bad and we keep the good good, and we just hunt for the good and immense the bad. In early 1996, I was recovering from an eye surgery that I had in October. I grew up never being able to see perfectly. I had very, very poor vision in my left eye. My right retina had detached when I was young. And, you know, at 15, I had always wanted to do martial arts. I had always wanted to be, you know, Bruce Lee, or I wanted to be the Ninja Turtles, or you know, all these different like cool explorations of martial arts and adventure and heroics, whether it be fiction or real. And I never could. Some of that was because I didn't have a lot of money growing up, and some of that was because, you know, I wasn't allowed to do any kind of contact sports. You know, any kind of wrestling even, because, you know, just one solid takedown, I hit my head on the ground, I could have had to go get eye surgeries. And it got really bad. In my freshman year of high school, I had 2 major eye surgeries. One lasted for like 5.5 hours. And then going into my sophomore year, I had another one and another one. And by the time I had this interesting incident in early 1996, I'd had 4 major eye surgeries in less than a year, another laser surgery. And at this time, I was in this limbo spot. They didn't want me lifting weights. They didn't want me running. They didn't want me swimming. Anything that could possibly knock my head in any kind of, you know, retinal hemorrhage, nothing. And I was getting restless. I was a 15-year-old kid. I loved adventure. I used to skateboard when I was young. You know, my mom was a little bit not too stoked with that, but, you know, that's what you do, right? And I got restless. And so what does any responsible 15-year-old kid do? He cranks out some Pantera. Still love that band. As loud as it will go. He'll grab a pair of nunchucks and then hit himself in his good eye. And the last thing I ever saw was my dimming vision as I scrambled to catch the phone to call 911 for emergency services. And I was like scared. I didn't know what was happening. I was afraid. And, you know, I didn't know what to do. I had 2 more eye surgeries after that. I had another laser surgery after that. So in a period of less than a year, I had 6 general anesthesia eye surgeries, and I had 2 laser surgeries. And at that time, by the way, if you go and get a laser surgery now, it doesn't hurt. At that time, it hurt. They didn't figure out the whole numbing thing quite so well in 1996, 1995. Wasn't there. And my mom is also blind, by the way. Different condition. It might be linked. We haven't figured that out yet. We're going to learn more about genetics now. But I saw her life, and she lived a really full life. And she didn't have to live in a limbo spot. She didn't have to wonder. And, you know, I talked to the doctors, and I was kind of done with hospitals, man, going in and out. You know, I didn't have to stay for very long, but I hated it. It was not a fun deal. And I talked to the doctor, and he said, well, you got about a 50-50 chance of this next surgery working, and you're going to have less eyesight, and you're going to have to be just as careful. And I was like, enough of that. I want life. I want to go explore and be adventurous. And I said, you know what, thank you. I'm going to just see what life can be like if I'm blind. And what I did, I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew it was going to be scary. But here's the challenge I'm going to put out to you. You can either seek security. You can seek comfort and safety. Or you can run towards adversity and pressure testing and the things that frighten you. My namesake, Joshua, in the Bible, and there's other places in the Hebrew Scriptures where the exhortation is for God's people to be strong and courageous. Now, there's a lot of different contexts and what that means, and, you know, I'm not going to get into some of the subtleties of that, but one of the aspects that I take that to mean is, if I'm going to be strong, how do I get strong? Some of you guys have been doing the action strength, you've been doing kettlebell workouts and stuff. Do I get strong by looking at weights, smelling weights, feeling weights, reading books about weights, thinking about the molecular, you know, makeup of the particular weight that I'm picking up? Or do I get stronger by lifting the weights? I get stronger by lifting the weights. You know, so if I want to be stronger, what do I got to do? I got to do hard stuff. You know, like earlier today, we had people throwing passing kettlebells. You don't get that way by just standing around looking, wow, that's really cool. You got to do it. You got to put in the work. You don't get to be a martial arts master by not training. And as awesome as Bruce Lee movies are, that's not enough. You actually got to do it. The other thing is with fear, right? People want to say, oh, I want to be fearless. I don't want to be fearless. Because there's not a lot of virtue in being fearless. Because courage, Rudy Giuliani, who was the mayor of New York City just after the 9/11 attacks, he said, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is facing your fear and doing it anyway. Now here's the thing for me. About 6 months after I lost my eyesight, what did I start doing? I didn't have to worry about losing my eyesight. I went water skiing, first time. Later I went rock climbing, got my belay card at a climbing gym here in Santa Cruz because this is where I grew up. Later I jumped out of an airplane 3 times. And I got to tell you, there's nothing like hearing birds underneath you. Right? There's nothing like it. And a couple years ago, I jumped off the stratosphere in Las Vegas. It's amazing. It was so cool. You can do it. Don't worry, they put you in a harness. Although I did make sure you got me strapped in, right? You got me strapped. You sure? I'm not stupid. I mean, But here's the crazy thing for me, right? And this is more the kind of the uncertainty, the scariness. I've been doing martial arts for 12 years now. I dabbled when I was a kid and stuff, and and even after I lost my eyesight, I did kung fu for a little bit less than a year, and I had the privilege of training with group training in ninjutsu. I think it's the same background that our friend Travis is from, but I didn't really take it seriously. And then in 2005, I started training consistently, and I started exploring this whole martial arts journey and kind of seeing what's going on and what I can do with my life, and kind of figuring out what is the adventure I can have. And I stopped asking questions like, why can't I do this? Because what's the built-in presumption? If I say, why can't I do something, the presumption is I can't do it. And we're all really smart. I've met most of you. Most of you are really smart people. And if you ask the question, why can't I, you're going to come up with a million reasons why you can't. If you ask the question, how can I, even if most people wouldn't even think that there's a way to do it, you're going to find it if it's there. And so for me, I decided, hey, let's see how I can learn how to use a sword. Let's see how I can learn how to use nunchucks. Let's see how I can learn how to spar and how to figure out where somebody is by throwing that professional speaker even. Lead hand jab. There we go. And I wanted to see what life could be like. And a little over a year ago, and this is where the intersect of difficult and scary shows up for me in my current life, my current journey, what I'm doing now. So a little over a year ago, I'd been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a few years, and I wanted to learn Judo. And I'd always avoided Judo. I had avoided Judo because I didn't like the idea of being thrown and not knowing where that ground was coming. And still to this day, I've been doing Judo for a little over a year now. To me, Judo is absolutely terrifying. And Judo is harder than any other martial art I've done. And even actually scarier for me than jumping out of an airplane. But why do I still do it? Because it's good for me. It's good for me to do things that are scary because it allows me to cultivate courage. It's good for me to do things that are difficult because it allows me to become stronger. And what's difficult for you and what's scary for you is going to be different than what's difficult and what's scary for me. Right? So, for you, Judo's like, yeah, no big deal, but don't get me anywhere near a plane that I got to jump out of. Come on, what's up with that, right? So it's going to vary from person to person. We all have different personality types. We all have different animals that our bodies are resemble, And here's the other thing, because I like knowing my financial outlook. I like knowing where my, for me, I didn't grow up having a lot of money. I grew up food stamps and, government cheese and all that kind of stuff, right? And I had a pretty decent job where I was teaching computers to other blind people. I was what's called an access technology specialist. I got to even teach Apple staff how to use some of their own products. That was pretty crazy. I love doing that. But it wasn't enough. I craved adventure. I needed to do something more. I wanted to share my story with people and help open up the doors for other martial artists to teach other visually impaired people. So if you're not doing that, if you have never taught a blind person how to do martial arts, think long and hard about it. Maybe that's what's scary for you. Maybe that's what's difficult for you. I'd be glad to help you with that. A little over a year ago, I quit my job. I had a good job. I had, great medical coverage, and my medical insurance even paid for acupuncture. It was like a very progressive sort of deal, and I quit it because I needed to do something more. And for the last year, I've been seeking new adventure experiences. I'm competing in my first surfing contest next month, or this month, I guess. Now I just went skateboarding since the first time since I lost my eyesight.
Yes.
So I'm doing all these things because I'm trying to cultivate that adventure spirit in my life so I can share it to other people. I still haven't figured out where things are going. I don't know the end of the story, but I know it's going to be a damn good story. And I would rather fail miserably. I would rather crash and burn into a giant cataclysm of flames and be burnt to a crisp than to be laying on my deathbed wondering if I could have only done something else. Because, the thing is nobody who's done something great ever says, man, I'm glad I played it safe. Nobody ever says, man, I'm glad I didn't risk anything. And here's the ultimate thing that I'm going to leave you with. Whatever is scary for you, whatever is difficult for you, you could play it safe. You could have a comfortable life. Or you could go and become strong and courageous. You could cultivate that adventurer's mindset. And you know what's cool about confronting difficulty and using adversity to climb higher? You know what's cool about facing your fear and doing it anyway? The vividness of your life. The vividness of the experience you get to have. There's nothing like the taste of that beer right after you get up from grabbing that, parachute ride down. There's nothing like having that breath of fresh mountain air after you climbed a long hike that was, treacherous. There's nothing like that hug from your brother after he just showed you how to skate. There's nothing like that experience of hearing the seagull after you make your way to shore on a surfboard for the first time. You're never going to get to experience that if you're not willing to live. And so, if you got things that are difficult, if you got things that are scary, examine in your heart. And when you're ready, or even when you're not ready, run to them. Your life will never be the same. So thank you very much.
Yeah.